The morning began like any other for Nia. The sun poured gently through the classroom windows as she stood before her students, a worn poetry book in hand. She loved these moments. The rhythm of young voices reciting verses, the spark in their eyes when a line clicked. Teaching literature wasn't just her job, it was her peace. By noon, the school buzzed with laughter and chatter as students rushed out for lunch, and Nia packed her bag slowly, smiling at how ordinary and good life felt. After school, she stopped by the market, weaving through stalls filled with the smell of ripe mangoes and roasted maize. Grace, the vegetable seller she'd known for years, waved her over. "Nia, you still working too hard," she teased. Nia laughed, picking out tomatoes. "One day, I'll retire and buy that little farm in Naivasha," she said. Grace grinned. "You've been saying that since 2010. They both laughed, the kind of laughter that comes easy between friends. As she walked home, Nia felt content. The evening breeze carried the scent of rain and dust, and everything felt perfectly ordinary. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, expecting a message from Grace or one of her students. Instead, her stomach dropped. The notification read, "Transaction of 1,200,000 Kenyan shillings in process." For a second, she thought it was a mistake. She blinked, checked again. No, her name, her account. Her chest tightened. She hadn't approved any transfer. Heart racing, she shoved her groceries into her bag and started running toward the bank, her calm morning vanishing into panic. Nia rushed into the bank, her breath short and her heart pounding. The air inside was cool and quiet, but her mind was anything but calm. She went straight to the counter, clutching her phone as if it could explain what had just happened. "Excuse me," she said, trying to sound steady. "I just received a message about a transaction from my account. 1,200,000 shillings. I didn't make it." The young teller frowned, typing quickly on his computer. His eyes darted to the screen, then back to her. "Could you wait a moment, ma'am?" he said softly. He picked up the phone and murmured something before standing up. "Please have a seat. I'll call the branch manager." A few minutes later, a tall man in a crisp gray suit appeared. His smile was polite but serious. "Mrs. Mwangi, I'm Mr. Odieno, the branch manager. Would you mind stepping into my office for a moment?" Inside, he closed the door gently behind her and lowered his voice. "I wanted to speak to you privately," he began. "Someone tried to withdraw all the money from your account earlier today." Nia's stomach dropped. "What? How is that possible?" Mr. Odieno sighed and reached for a file on his desk. "We stopped the transaction before it went through. But there's something strange." He slid a paper toward her, a copy of the withdrawal slip. "The signature matched yours exactly." Nia leaned forward, her fingers trembling as she studied the paper. The handwriting was perfect. Every curve of the letters, every small flourish, exactly how she signed her name. This is my handwriting," she whispered. Mr. Odieno nodded slowly. "That's why I needed to show you this myself." He tapped a key on his keyboard and turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was a grainy CCTV image taken from the counter earlier that morning. Nia squinted at it, her heart hammering. The person in the photo wore a simple blouse and had their hair tied back neatly. For a moment, she thought it might be some strange coincidence, someone who only looked like her. But then she saw the face clearly. Her breath caught in her throat. The shape of the chin, the familiar eyes, the nervous smile. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't even a distant relative. It was Amani, her own daughter. Nia's world seemed to collapse into silence. The ticking of the office clock grew louder, almost unbearable. She sat frozen, staring at the image that didn't make sense, that couldn't make sense. Mr. Odieno's voice came softly, almost apologetic. "I thought you should know before we take any action." Nia swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. As she left the office, the photo burned in her mind. Her daughter's face, caught in betrayal. Nia stared at the computer screen, her fingers trembling so much she had to grip the edge of Mr. Odieno's desk to steady herself. "That can't be my daughter," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not Amani." Mr. Odieno sighed, his expression soft with pity. "I wish it wasn't true, Mrs. Mwangi, but we verified everything. The signature matched yours perfectly, and she used your ID number." When the teller asked, she said her mother was sick and had sent her to make the withdrawal on her behalf. Nia blinked, stunned. "She said that?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." The staff found her convincing. "She even knew your account details and how you usually sign. But something about her seemed nervous, so they called me before completing the transaction. That's when she left suddenly. We froze the account right away." Nia sat back in the chair, her heart aching in a way she had never felt before. Her daughter, her Amani, the same girl she'd raised alone after her husband passed, the girl she'd sacrificed so much for, sneaking an extra tutoring job just to pay her school fees, skipping her own comforts to make sure Amani never lacked. "I can't believe this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why would she do this to me?" Mr. Odieno looked down respectfully. I don't know, Mrs. Mwangi, but I thought it best you heard it from me before anything official was filed. Nia nodded numbly. Thank you, she said quietly, her lips dry. She gathered her things slowly, as if her body no longer belonged to her, and walked out of the bank in a daze. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt too bright, almost cruel. She stepped into a matata heading home, sitting by the window and staring out without really seeing anything. The city rushed past, vendors calling out prices, children running along the streets, people laughing as if the world were perfectly fine. But inside her, everything had cracked open. Why, Amani? The question kept echoing in her mind. Was her daughter in some kind of trouble? Was someone forcing her? Or had she simply changed, become someone Nia no longer knew? She replayed their last few conversations, searching for signs she might have missed. Amani had been distant lately, always too busy or glued to her phone. But stealing? Forging her mother's name? That was something else entirely. As the matata bounced along the road, Nia clenched her fists in her lap. The shock was slowly turning into something sharper. A quiet, burning anger began to take root. By the time she reached her gate, the numbness had worn off. She unlocked the door, dropped her bag on the couch, and stood in the stillness of her living room. Her voice came out in a whisper, trembling but firm. She has to explain this. That evening, Nia sat in the living room, the lights dim and the air heavy with silence. She hadn't cooked dinner. She hadn't even changed out of her work clothes. The photocopy from the bank lay folded on the table in front of her, its edges already crumpled from how many times she had opened and stared at it. Each time, the sight of her own handwriting, her forged signature, stabbed at her heart like a fresh wound. Hours passed. Outside, the city softened into evening, and the sound of footsteps finally came from the gate. The door creaked open, and Amani's cheerful humming filled the room as she walked in, phone in hand. Hi, Mama, she said lightly. You're home early today. Nia looked up slowly. Her voice was calm, too calm. Amani, did you go to my bank today? Amani froze mid-step. What? No. Why would I go to your bank? She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Nia didn't answer. She reached for the folded paper and placed it on the table between them. Then explain this, she said quietly. Amani's smile faded. Her eyes dropped to the photocopy. The color drained from her face. Mama, Why, Amani? Nia asked softly, her voice trembling. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't blink. Why would you do this? Amani swallowed hard, her hands shaking. It was just a loan, she whispered. I needed some money for my business. I thought I could replace it before you even noticed. I swear I was going to pay it back. Nia closed her eyes, shaking her head. A loan? Amani, that's not a loan. You forged my name. Her voice cracked, the pain breaking through. You pretended to be me. Amani's breath hitched. She took a step forward, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mama. I was desperate. Things weren't going well, and I didn't know what else to do. Please, you have to understand. But Nia stood still, her eyes full of disappointment that cut deeper than anger ever could. Understand, she said, barely above a whisper. You looked at my name, wrote it with your own hand, and still thought it was okay. Amani dropped to her knees, crying harder. I'm sorry. Please, Mama, I'll fix it. I promise I'll fix everything. Nia turned away, covering her mouth as if to keep from crying out. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but sharp. Intentions don't erase betrayal. For a long moment, there was only the sound of Amani's sobs. The air between them felt heavy, filled with all the words that couldn't be taken back. Nia stared at the wall, her heart breaking in slow, quiet pieces. The daughter she'd trusted most had become the one to wound her deepest. Word spread faster than Nia expected. By the next afternoon, Grace was at her door, carrying a bag of fresh fruit and that same worried look friends wear when words feel too small. She found Nia sitting by the window, her cup of tea untouched, her eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the garden. Grace set the bag down quietly. You've barely eaten, she said softly. Talk to me, Nia. What happened? Nia sighed, her voice flat. You must have already heard. Grace hesitated, then nodded. People talk, but don't be too hard on her. Children make mistakes. Nia turned to her, eyes tired but steady. This wasn't a mistake, Grace. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door or breaking a plate. This was a choice. She planned it, she signed my name, and she looked me in the eye after. Grace said nothing for a moment. The only sound was the faint hum of the street outside. She reached out and touched Nia's arm. She's still your daughter. I know, Nia said quietly, and that's what makes it hurt more. Days passed in heavy silence. Amani tried to apologize over and over, leaving notes by Nia's door, cooking dinner, even waiting outside her room late into the night. But Nia couldn't bring herself to speak to her. The betrayal had carved too deep a wound, one that needed time and distance more than words. Each night, when the house went quiet, Nia would open the old wooden box under her bed. Inside were letters from her late husband, Peter. Letters he'd written years ago when they were still building their lives together. The paper had yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but his words still felt alive. No matter how hard life gets, never let go of your dignity. Money comes and goes, but integrity stays. Nia read that line again and again until tears blurred the words. She whispered into the dark, "I won't let you destroy what we built, Peter. I won't." The next morning, she woke early before sunrise. The city was still half asleep, wrapped in a quiet fog. She dressed neatly, as if preparing for work, but this time, she wasn't heading to school. She took a matata to the bank, clutching her handbag close. The teller recognized her and smiled, but Nia's expression didn't soften. "I need to make some changes to my account," she said firmly. She wasn't there to withdraw money, not this time. She was there to take control, to protect what was left of her trust, her peace, and her future. As she signed the papers, her hand trembled just slightly. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was resolve. At the bank, Nia sat across from the manager's desk, her expression calm but unreadable. She'd been coming here for years, but today felt different. The air was cool, the room quiet except for the sound of pens scratching and papers sliding across the table. "I'd like to freeze my main account," she said, "and I want all my savings moved into a trust fund under my name only." Mr. Odieno nodded respectfully. "Of course, Mrs. Mwangi. May I ask the reason?" Nia gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's just say I'm securing my peace." After the transfer, she filled out one last form, an automatic monthly donation to a girls' education charity. She'd supported the cause before, but now it meant something deeper. If she couldn't trust her own daughter to protect her values, she would invest in girls who still had a chance to build theirs. When she got home that afternoon, Amani was waiting at the dining table, her eyes red and puffy. "Mama, please," she said, standing as soon as Nia walked in. "I've been thinking. I'm so sorry for what I did. I just want you to forgive me." Nia placed her handbag down slowly. "Amani, I do forgive you," she said gently. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." Amani looked confused. "What do you mean?" Nia took an envelope from her bag and handed it to her. Amani opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter terminating her leave. Her mouth fell open. "Mama, what is this?" "You'll have to move out in 2 weeks," Nia said quietly. "It's time you learn life the way I did, from the ground up. You need to know what it feels like to build something on your own." Amani's voice cracked. "You're choosing money over me?" Nia looked at her daughter for a long moment before answering, her tone calm but firm. "No, Amani. I'm choosing peace over pain." Amani sank into the chair, crying softly. "Where will I even go?" "You're strong," Nia said, her voice softer now. "Stronger than you think. You'll find your way." She turned toward the window, watching the evening light fade over the rooftops. It hurt, more than she would ever admit, but she knew this was necessary. Love, she realized, wasn't always about protecting someone. Sometimes it was about letting them face the storm they created. That night, as Nia lay in bed, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks, quiet. Not happiness, not victory, just quiet. The kind that comes when a wound starts to close, even if the scar will never fade. Amani's move was quiet and painful. 2 weeks after receiving the letter, she packed her things into 2 small suitcases and left the house she'd called home her whole life. Nia didn't watch her go, though she heard the soft thud of the door closing and the sound of a matatu pulling away. The silence afterward was heavy, but necessary. Amani found a tiny apartment in a crowded neighborhood on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the water sometimes cold, and the nights long. She tried to start fresh, sending out job applications and reopening her small online business, but nothing seemed to work. Employers turned her down again and again. The business barely brought in enough to pay rent, and soon, she fell behind on bills. The confidence she once carried started to fade. Each rejection felt like a reminder of what she had lost, not just comfort, but her mother's trust. Back in her quiet home, Nia began to rebuild her own life. She started volunteering twice a week at a local school, helping young girls with their reading. Watching their faces light up when they learned something new filled her with purpose again. On weekends, she tended her garden, talking to her plants as if they could listen. Grace often stopped by, bringing laughter and gossip about the neighborhood. Slowly, the sadness in Nia's eyes began to lift. One afternoon, after watering her flowers, Nia sat down to check her phone. There was a message from an unknown number, but she recognized the tone before she even read the name. "Mom, I'm sorry. Please, can we talk?" She stared at the message for a long time, her heart tight. Part of her wanted to ignore it. She had finally found peace, and reopening that wound terrified her. She placed the phone face down and tried to distract herself with housework, but her mind wouldn't stop returning to those words. By evening, she whispered to herself, "She's still my daughter." The next day, Nia sent a short reply. "Okay, let's meet tomorrow at the cafe near the station." When she arrived, the cafe was half empty. She spotted Amani right away, sitting by the window. She looked smaller somehow, thinner, her eyes tired, her once confident posture replaced with quiet humility. She stood when she saw her mother, her voice trembling. "Mama." Nia took a seat slowly, her heart heavy but open. Up close, she could see how much her daughter had changed. There was no trace of arrogance, only remorse. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them felt fragile, like a thin bridge that could break at any wrong word. Then Nia said softly, "Let's talk." And for the first time in months, they did, not as enemies, but as two broken hearts trying to find their way back to each other. The small cafe was quiet except for the soft clinking of cups and the low hum of music in the background. Nia sat across from Amani, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. She wasn't sure what to expect, excuses, tears, maybe even anger. But when Amani finally looked up, her eyes were already full of regret. "Mama," she began, her voice shaking, "there's something I need to tell you, the real reason I did what I did." Nia stayed silent, giving her a small nod. Amani took a deep breath. "It started with Brian, my boyfriend. He told me about this investment deal, said it was a chance to double my money in a few weeks. I trusted him, Mama. I gave him everything I had saved for my business." She paused, tears filling her eyes. Then he disappeared. His number stopped working. I couldn't reach him anywhere. Nia felt a sharp ache in her chest but said nothing. She just listened. Amani wiped her face with the back of her hand. "When I realized I'd lost everything, I panicked. I was scared to tell you because I knew you'd be disappointed. I thought if I could just get some money from your account, I'd invest it, get it back quickly, and replace it before you even noticed." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to steal from you, Mama. I just wanted to fix my mistake." The words hung heavy between them. Nia stared at her daughter, the same girl she'd once taught to write her name, to tell the truth, to never take what wasn't her. The same girl now confessing her deepest shame. "I see," Nia finally said, her tone quiet, steady. "So you trusted the wrong person, and when it fell apart, you lost yourself too." Amani nodded slowly, crying harder. "I did, and I hate myself for it." For a long moment, Nia said nothing. She sipped her tea, her mind swirling with sadness more than anger now. She thought about the years they had shared, the birthdays, the laughter, the promises she had made to raise her daughter strong and honest. Somewhere along the way, Amani had stumbled. But maybe, just maybe, this was her way of finding her feet again. "You can rebuild," Nia said softly, reaching across the table to touch her daughter's hand. "But only if you rebuild yourself first. Money will come and go, but if you lose yourself, there's nothing left to stand on." Amani gripped her mother's hand tightly, crying quietly. "Thank you, Mama. I don't deserve your kindness." Nia looked into her eyes and smiled faintly. "You don't have to deserve it. You just have to change." They sat there for a long while, hands still joined, saying nothing. It wasn't full forgiveness. Not yet, but for the first time in months, there was peace in their silence. And that was enough to begin again. A year had passed since that difficult afternoon in the cafe. Life had slowly begun to settle into a new rhythm for both Nia and Amani. Amani had found a stable job at a local marketing firm, a position that paid her enough to manage her rent, bills, and slowly chip away at the debt she had nearly hidden from her mother. She had become disciplined, waking early, managing her time carefully, and thinking twice before making decisions. One Saturday morning, she knocked on Nia's door with a small envelope in her hand and a nervous smile. "Mama, I want to show you something," she said. Nia raised an eyebrow, curious. "What is it, Amani?" Amani handed her the envelope. Inside were printed receipts showing that she had made a donation to the same girl's education fund her mother supported. The handwriting was neat, the dates recent, and the amounts modest but consistent. Nia's eyes softened as she looked over the papers. A proud smile broke across her face. "You've finally learned what real wealth looks like," she said quietly. "It's not about money. It's about values, responsibility, and helping others." Amani's eyes glistened with tears, but this time they weren't tears of shame or fear. "I want to make things right, Mama. I want to be someone you can trust." From that day on, their relationship slowly began to heal. Weekends that had once been silent and tense became moments of shared joy again. They cooked together, experimenting with new recipes and laughing over small disasters in the kitchen. Sometimes they'd sit in the garden, sipping tea and talking about everything, from work challenges to dreams of traveling. The house, once heavy with unspoken anger and sorrow, now carried warmth and conversation. Nia watched her daughter carefully, noticing the maturity that had grown alongside the struggles. The mistakes, the pain, and the distance had shaped Amani into someone stronger and more thoughtful. And Nia realized something profound. Sometimes pain is the seed of wisdom. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset, Nia reached over and squeezed Amani's hand. "I know we can't forget what happened," she said, "but we can move forward. You've earned a second chance, and I'll be here while you build the person you want to be." Amani smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude washing over her. "Thank you, Mama, for trusting me again." Nia looked at the soft orange sky, letting the moment sink in. Life hadn't been easy, and the scars would always be there, but they were learning together, to forgive, to rebuild, and to find joy in the little victory. And for Nia, seeing her daughter grow into responsibility, kindness, and wisdom felt like the richest reward of all. The house echoed with laughter once more, proof that even after betrayal, love could bloom again. The bank smelled faintly of polished wood and paper, the same as it had on that tense morning months ago. Nia stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. Mr. Otieno looked up from his desk, his face lighting up with a warm smile. "Mrs. Mwangi," he said cheerfully, "it's good to see you again. I wanted to tell you, your daughter came by last week." Nia blinked, surprised. "She did?" Mr. Otieno nodded. "Yes, but this time, she wasn't here to withdraw money. She came to open a savings account. She even deposited her first salary." Nia's lips curved into a soft smile. A sense of pride and relief washed over her. "Then maybe," she murmured, "she finally understands value. Not just the value of money, but the value of responsibility, honesty, and hard work." She thanked Mr. Otieno and turned to leave, pausing at the door for a moment to take in the scene. The sunlight reflecting off the polished glass, the quiet hum of customers and tellers going about their day. She felt calm, stronger somehow, as if the weight of the past months had finally settled. As she stepped out into the bright afternoon, she whispered to herself, "Some lessons money can't buy. They have to be earned through loss." For the first time in a long while, she walked with a lightness in her step. Life had tested them both, but it had also taught them. And sometimes she realized the hardest lessons brought the most lasting. The sunlight glinted off the bank doors one last time as she walked away, the city moving around her, ordinary and beautiful. A quiet sense of victory filled her heart, not loud or dramatic, just steady, calm, and earned.